Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Min Kavat. The new race for space has been underway for years, with countries eyeing everything from colonization of the moon to mining for titanium and even helium-3. But one of the most recent developments focuses much closer to home. We look at why the nearest of Earth's orbits, known as low Earth orbit, or LEO, is fast becoming the latest battleground for dominance between the US and China, and how commercialization in space could mean Taiwan emerges as a space player in a satellite market valued at $380 billion. Joining us today are Kuo Yu-jen, National Sun Yat-sen University Institute of China and Asia Pacific Studies Professor and Director, and Institute for National Policy Research Vice President. Also joining us is Kwang-yin Liu, Managing Editor of CommonWealth Magazine and also the host of Taiwanology podcast. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show. No other event has highlighted the potential of low Earth orbit, nor the influence of Elon Musk's Starlink with its constellation of 5,000 communication satellites, more than the Ukraine war. But with power also comes vulnerability. The US believes Russia is developing what could be a nuclear-powered space-based weapon in its war against Ukraine.
I know that Chairman Turner's letter to House members and his subsequent post on social media about a national security threat has prompted a lot of questions. While I am limited by how much I can share about the specific nature of the threat, I can confirm that it is related to an anti-satellite capability that Russia is developing.
One of the biggest concerns the Russian Federation has right now is Starlink and other commercial assets for photo reconnaissance, what have you. They could actually use this to go up and try and disable individual Starlink satellites or groups of Starlink satellites, or even easily disable these photo reconnaissance satellites that are owned by commercial companies. So it has a lot of utility, and because communication, photo reconnaissance, these are all valuable assets in a strategic battlefield.
Professor Kuo, let me come to you first. So how concerning is this news of an anti-satellite weapon being developed by Russia?
First of all, the previous news tend to believe the Russian government is trying to develop nuclear weapon in the space. There is no such example or experience before ever to have to launch a nuclear warhead outside Earth, meaning from the space. So I do not believe there is currently such a existing technology to support this idea. More realistically, I will believe Russian intention to develop EMP. It's a electric kind of warfare powered by nuclear in the space station to attack other satellites from other countries, especially intelligence satellites.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and this would obviously give it an advantage, Kwang-yin, in the war in Ukraine, where basically Kiev is using Elon Musk's Starlink. They are using it because obviously the ground-based cables have been destroyed.
Right. I think from 2 years ago, ever since the war started, we have seen Starlink play a rather important role in the war. But I think we also see it's a knife that cuts both ways, because it looks like Elon Musk, the entrepreneur of SpaceX, would just switch Starlink on and off based on his interests, because we saw what happened in Crimea. He was refusing to switch on Starlink in Crimea because it was occupied by Russia. So I think this is something that we should pay attention to.
How strategically important this satellite internet has become, not just in Russia, but now globally.
First of all,
it's not just in Ukraine.
Yeah. First of all, actually before the outbreak of Ukraine war, February 24th, 2022, people tend to believe Ukraine will just fall apart within 3 days or in a week. And then before Ukrainian war, including experts or scholars, including myself, believing the development of weapon system tend to be more powerful, tend to have longer range, tend to be more precision. And the Ukrainian case basically proved all of us were wronged. And the reason for that is, I mean, before you could hit, target very far away, you should be able to see it, what we call C4ISR. That's computing, commanding, control, communication, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Those are the basic functionality for our militaries to be able to fight.
So to basically build up the domain, to see
Exactly,
clearly, like you said, the full domain of fighting.
Exactly, and we didn't believe LEO satellite could play such an important role before Ukrainian war. So that was strategically very, very important. And in addition to that, I was attending conferences earlier, mid-January this year to Vienna and to Budapest. Again, I am a security scholar. I've been thinking about the lessons and reflections from Ukrainian war that Taiwan could learn from that. Lots of people talking about national defense resilience from there. But the conclusion that I got after my trip to Europe this year was we had to renew our national security concept. President Zelensky did a very important thing. He did this FaceTime on February 26 outside the president's office, along with his cabinet members, his Joint Chief of Staff, his defense minister. And he delivered one single very important message to the Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian military, and to international community that we are all here.
Absolutely.
So informing Ukrainian people that your government, your leader, didn't run away. We are here to fight.
Yeah.
And allowing the Ukrainian military to have the morale to continue fighting.
Okay, and he also used, an internet, a functioning internet system across his country in order to get that message across. Let's take a look here. By the end of the decade, more than 50,000 low Earth orbit satellites are expected to be deployed worldwide. Satellites operate in a range of orbits, including the LEO that we mentioned, medium Earth orbit, MEO, geosynchronous orbit, GEO, and highly elliptical orbit, HEO. Let's talk about Kwang-yin. Can you explain how the LEO communication satellites, the new ones that Professor mentioned, how do they differ to those traditional satellites?
Right. So as we could tell from the name, LEO is low Earth orbit satellites. They operate within, I think the maximum is 2,000 kilometers. So that's different from MEO. And the LEO sets, they can complete one orbit in around 90 minutes, as opposed to 2 to 6 hours of a MEO satellite. So that's a really short time. And as we could see maybe from this graphic, we could see that in the past 2-3 years, actually within 5 years, we could see the number of LEOsats dramatically increase. Yeah. That's basically thanks to Elon Musk and his SpaceX and this company called Starlink. They have been launching a lot of satellites into the orbit in the past few years. And so according to a story my coworkers have done in last month, there are about 15,000 LEOsats currently circulating, and more than half of them are from the US. And more than 1/3 of all the LEOsats belong to Starlink. So that's really the lion's share.
So was it that unusual for him to have that vision, to understand how important, the LEO satellite communication would become?
Yeah, coming from a business reporter's perspective, we are always very interested in what's going on in Elon Musk's mind. We really think he really wants to think outside of the box, because in the past, space was off limits for business people, So no businessman would ever think of touching what NASA was controlling. But
Is there something for governments as
yeah,
opposed to individual enterprise?
It's always been like that. So, but I think Elon Musk was such a maverick. He wanted to do something really different, and the prevalence of LEOsats is really because of Starlink and also SpaceX, the reusable rocket technology. It drastically reduced the costs of launching rockets and launching satellites into the orbit. I think by it reduced the cost, it's now only 10% of what it was before.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what made it possible for private businesses to get into this field.
So what's briefly behind the reusable component to it? Why was that top secret?
Right. I think we will have to interview SpaceX to find out about that. But we were looking at 5,200 satellites by Starlink. But according to the research I did, they plan to expand the fleet by 8 times in the next, maybe the next decade or so. So it's really, really quite ambitious.
Right.
Yeah.
And will there still be room, Professor, for 8 times the 40,000, plus some other competitors in the LEO space?
First of all, I would like to explain a little bit on why the reason after the war entered in 21st century, and all of a sudden, as you just mentioned, all those technology and activities are supposed to be controlled and manipulated, dominated by national agencies like NASA, Japanese JAXA, and all of a sudden, all these private sector could participate. The reason is because our technological development in the 20th century, we do have this kind of concept called dual use, military and commercial use. And 20th century actually mark, 99% is what we call spin-off. Spin-off technology, meaning from military technology and commercialized. So things like a flat monitor, the cell phone you are holding, internet, all those technology was originally used by the military. And so that's what we call spin-off. So a lot of technology used to be considered as traditional technology, for example, like ceramic. Ceramic today is high-tech, it's normal traditional industry. So technology or industry like carbon fiber, textile, used to be considered as traditional industry, but no more because they could apply largely in satellites and in rockets. So I believe with the spreading over of space technology, Elon Musk's ambition will be realized, but the problem is not there. It's not technology. It's international regulation.
Right. Okay.
We have zero today international regulation regarding, for example, the functionality of satellites, the frequency, the size, including the equipment you can carry to wear outer space. We have zero international regulation or consensus building mechanism at all. Yeah.
And this is obviously going to become a big issue in terms of US-China rivalry within space.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into that, let's take a look now at Taiwan's own low orbit ambitions. In October 2023, President Tsai Ing-wen announced over $40 billion in investments for low orbit satellite development, national launch sites, and talent training. To find out more, I spoke to Loren Chang, distinguished professor at the department and department chair at the Department of Space and Engineering at Taiwan's National Central University.
One of our national priorities from both a commercial and a security perspective is to establish a network of communication satellites in low Earth orbit. From a national security perspective, this is important in terms of communications robustness. So all of our external communications, anytime you surf the internet, anytime you swipe a credit card, all that information is going through one of something like a little over a dozen submarine fiber optic cables that connect Taiwan to the outside world. Now, if these cables were to be severed through either an accident, natural disaster, or intentional sabotage, then this would essentially cut us off from the rest of the world. Now, you may recall last February, there was an incident where the two submarine cables linking Matsu to Taiwan were severed in rapid succession within the span of 1 month, if not shorter than that, by Chinese trawlers and fishing boats. And of course, it was impossible to eliminate whether this was purely an accident or whether this was another instance of gray zone warfare. So in the end, this highlighted the importance of having a backup.
What capabilities does Taiwan already have that makes it easy for it to enter this market?
We have an extensive presence in the electronics industry as well as the 5G communications industry. Many Taiwanese companies develop products such as modems, routers, or phased array antennas, as well as the requisite radio communications infrastructure that are necessary for such networks. And a lot of them are interested in customizing or developing new products for the LEO communications market.
How large would you say this market is? What's the demand for different applications for these satellites?
Well, it's quite significant. The idea is a significant portion of that, in fact, close to 1/3 of that market is actually for infrastructure and equipment that is actually used on the ground. Something as simple as the chip in your smartphone that's used to receive GPS signals, or for example, your smartwatch, or the chips in a new generation of smartphones that allow for satellite instant messaging via satellite. These are all ground-based applications. So these are all markets that Taiwanese companies are well equipped to tap into, and in some cases already do.
What Taiwan is wanting to do is not to provide a service like Starlink. Is that correct? Is it a different kind of model?
We are actually approaching this from multiple perspectives, both in terms of government and commercial. So for the commercial market, a lot of the companies in Taiwan that are interested in jumping into the space market are interested in piggybacking on existing international satellite communications providers like Starlink, OneWeb, or so forth. So they would be, they're developing products that are targeted towards, for example, the OEM model, where basically they provide the original equipment, which they then customize and provide for these international companies to use with their own networks. And domestically, from a government perspective, my understanding is we are approaching it both from making use of existing satellite communications networks internationally, as well as developing our own. The Taiwan Space Agency and the Industrial Technology Research Institute, ITRI, have also been working on developing a domestic satellite communications constellation. This is more of a longer-term project, and the idea is to have a satellite communications network that we have direct control and command authority over to, again, augment and supplement the existing international options.
Professor Kuo, so let's talk about Taiwan in a bit more detail. Taiwan's launched Triton, which is the first self-developed weather satellite. It was launched in October of last year. So what's the significance of Triton in terms of Taiwan's ambitions in space?
Triton is the first mile for Taiwan's indigenous effort to 100% indigenously build our own satellite. So that experience is very important, not only in terms of teamwork, organization-wise, methodology, and also all these priority settings for Taiwan Space Agency. So the two major priorities for TASA, for Taiwan Space Agency, is number one, our indigenous LEO satellites networking, and number two is our own launching capability, including establishing our own launching site. So that's two major priorities for TASA today. And in addition to that, also from Dr. Chang, we are basically witnessing a paradigm shift. All these LEO satellite signal sending, transmitting is basically at the methodology of electric pulse. But now we are utilizing Taiwan's advantage, optical electrical signals in the future. So which will allow much more capacity and faster speed of transmitting signals from the space to the ground. So Taiwan is really at a very good position to fuse our own Taiwan's technological advantages, including semiconductor, including our companies at advanced communications.
Okay. Kwang-yin, let's take a look now at what China is doing. It appears to be intensifying its satellite launch activities. There was a Long March 2C rocket which launched not just the Einstein probe on January 9th, which was just before our Taiwan presidential election, but others. What are China's objectives behind these launches?
Right, so we could actually see that China has announced a national ambition to integrate satellite capability into its national infrastructure plan. So if we go back to the graphic, we could see that China has the second highest number of LEOsats in the world, even though it's only 10% of what the US has. And we could actually see that the Chinese launching of satellites is picking up speed. Also in our CommonWealth story, we have a graphic that shows that our Ministry of Defense has detected at least 16 launches of LEOsats in the past year. And you could really see that picking up over the past few months. So I really think it's really part of the Chinese ambition to kind of dominate maybe the Asian market of LEOsats.
And what's behind all of that? Is it just a commercial thing or is it military?
Right, I would say that it's largely military because from our story we could see that unlike from the US, it's all from Starlink, it's a private company. But if you look at the companies that are launching the Chinese LEOsats, all of them have a military connection. I think it's pretty obvious that it's part of the military's ambition to integrate it into the military infrastructure for communication.
Okay, and Professor Kuo, would you second that? I mean, is this to do with being able to monitor U.S. activity across the globe?
I also agree that lots of the intention is out of military purposes, but I have to point out, especially on the drawback of Chinese system again. To the 21st century, LEO satellite development is actually, for other countries, including the States, two hands. You have private sector, private national agency, and you have a very robust private sector to try to commercialize all those technology. But in China, China only have single hand from the government,
right,
especially from the military. So further perspective, I will believe China will be left behind if the U.S. government, along with the private sector in the States, to join develop further on LEO satellite technology.
Okay, so in terms of innovation, okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Professor Kuo Yu-jen and Kwang-yin Liu, for joining the show today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.